Hello, my name is Miss Miller, and today we'll be talking about sequence. Essential question: what is sequence? Standard: with guidance and support, recount major events and familiar stories. Determine the beginning, middle, and end of familiar story with logical order. Vocabulary: sequencing is the skill that we use when we break down an event into simple steps and put those steps in order. Sequencing during reading. Sequencing refers to the identification of components of a story, the beginning, middle, and end, and also the ability to retell events within a given text in the order in which they occurred. Sequencing is an important component of problem solving across subjects. So typically when we think of sequencing, we may think of it in terms of just stories and reading and putting things in first, next, then, and finally order. But sequencing also occurs during math. Most math curricula include worksheets and ordinal numbers, first, second, and third. Also in the form of patterns. What goes first? What goes second? What goes third? And students will use sequencing to recreate the pattern. Also during science, helping children sequence develops their scientific inquiry skills. In order to study or observe changes in something, students must follow along and record changes. They could document it by drawing pictures, taking photographs, or just observing. An example would be a celery experiment, going through the steps, the sequencing, and the order of the events. Adding the dye, putting in the celery, and what's the end result? The leaves turn blue. There's also sequencing in social studies, and timelines are a great way to teach it in that subject. Kids may enjoy making a timeline of their own, such as events like their life, when they learn to walk, talk, ride a bike, and go to school. In addition, you could use it for Johnny Appleseed, which is a historic fable, to talk about Abraham Lincoln or Harriet Tubman. And this printable was found on teacherspayteachers.com. You can also use sequencing during everyday activities such as arts and crafts, where you're going through the steps and teaching children how to make something. The same with cooking. First, we use this, then we use that, in addition to daily activities such as the calendar and time. You can also utilize Teachers Pay Teachers. Let's take a look at the site. And here, I search for story sequencing and ascending order and look at the free items first. Here's one for rainbow fish. Here's one for general stories and images. Here's another for Jack and the Beanstalk, as well as the zoo. You can also look at YouTube. Brain Pop Jr. has a great video on sequencing that I've used with my students, and there are other videos that you could utilize as well. Get Epic has free books. And here I've searched by sequencing. And you can sort the books by age, reading level, fiction, nonfiction, format, and language. And there's a series on sequencing: building a snowman, building with blocks, making a book, making a valentine, planting a garden, carving a jack-o'-lantern, making cookies, making lemonade, and other sequencing stories as well. You could also utilize wow.boomlearning.com to sequence boom cards In here, I found one about toast, putting the toast recipe steps in order. So again, as we discussed, when you're cooking with your students, you could also utilize it as a sequencing activity. What do we do first? What do we do second, third, fourth, and potentially last? So the students would move the pieces to the correct order, the correct number, and then submit to check their answers. So let's take a look at some student work samples. So these are some work samples that I've done with my students. I found this image online and I took a screenshot of it and I typed the story. I am thirsty. 1. I get the milk. 2. I pour it in a glass. 3. I will drink the milk. So I read the story with the students. We discuss what the 3 images are, what we do in the sequential order. I even have students act it out for a fun activity. And then this is the work of one of my students, Logan, who was able, once we went through the story, acted it out, read the sentences, able to put everything in the correct sequence. First, we get the milk. Second, we pour the milk. Lastly, we take a drink. Here's another sequencing activity with 5 steps. And we talked about the activities of the day. 1, eating breakfast. 2, getting dressed. 3, play outside. 4, eat dinner. 5, go to bed. And this student, Makai, was able to move the pictures to place them in the correct order. So in conclusion, sequencing is a skill that we use when we break down an event into simple steps and put those steps in order. Sequencing is also an important component of problem solving across subjects. We typically think of it as something we associate with reading, but as I demonstrated, you're using it during math, arts and crafts, cooking, social studies, and science. YouTube, Teachers Pay Teachers, and Epic Books, as well as Boom Learning, have great activities and videos for sequencing. Thank you so much for watching today.